the heart of my studio. The heart of my studio is my Mac Pro, the little trash can cylinder, which probably is the best thing I've ever bought, actually, because up to about 6 months ago, I was using a laptop for everything, which seemed like a good idea because you could travel everywhere and do everything, and it was useful. Like, I was doing some work when I was in Australia and doing some work. You know, you had all your tunes there as well. It was like you could just, you know, you had your total studio from home and everything was there. But the fans were always kicking in. You know, anyone that says laptops are silent, they're not silent at all. And the fans were kicking in. It was slow, and I thought I just need to get one of these trash cans. So I bought a refurbed one because they were quite expensive to buy new. And yeah, it's been brilliant. I actually haven't run out of CPU yet. So that's saying a lot for me because I use 200 tracks easily and stuff. So, you know, it's one less thing to be stressed about. I get stressed about everything else, but it's one less thing to be stressed about, you know. This is the main machine. I mean, my laptop is I still have it, but again, it's like one of those things where, because it hasn't got as much power and it is a bit, so, you know, Apple, whatever they do to tweak it, I mean, it's about 4 years old. It's about time I bought a new laptop, but at the same time, I can't do everything on my laptop. So, you know, sometimes it's better just to go, the studio's a studio. When I'm around, when I'm traveling, I'll just do something else. And, you know, you get more done here anyway, you know. But, you know, I do need to get a little mini setup, I think, yeah. Yeah, I use Logic 10. I love it. Everyone seems to, a lot of people slated it when they came out. A lot of people jumped to Ableton. I didn't see what the difference was between Logic 9 and Logic 10, to be honest with you. It wasn't a massive difference. It looks better, but yeah, I think Logic's really good as well for the hardware insert thing. So like to add my SSL strips in the chain, you know, it's as simple as bringing up the in and out plugin like that and just sending it to it. So I find that really useful. Essential plugins. Well, the other good thing about Logic, you've got sub-menus, so I've actually done a folder called Essential, so I can tell you exactly. Camel Fat's in there. The Pro L is pretty useful. One of the things that I use the most, which is one of the most boring things ever, but it's a thing called, it's just free, and it's called the 3G Stereo from Synauxis, and it's like a long fader that does really fine movements. So say if I'm trying to like find a vocal, I think it needs to be down a bit, I just use this all the time because then I can bypass it and it's back at the original volume. Well, don't get me wrong, don't ask me why, but I've got really used to using that. I find that really helpful. And then what's some of the other more sexy stuff from there? Track Spacer plugin is really useful for all the side chaining stuff. Oxford Inflator. Oh yeah, this Massenburg EQ, that's a UAD only EQ, but that's the best EQ in the box. I don't find the EQs in the box to be generally that good, but this is a bit more like, I used to have a Yamaha digital desk years ago and I thought the EQ sounded good on that, and it reminds me of that. So it's kind of like just a bit more transparent. You can boost and it still stays in phase and stuff. And yeah, for Harler Room's probably the last one. Again, like $50, I think. Best room around. Room reverb plugin. There's probably better ones now, but I've just got really used to using it. Recycle I don't use as much. Like, I use a lot of recycled things, but they were sampled years ago. I've done so much sampling and recycling them that I've kind of got enough to go by. I mean, another plugin I use for that, there's a plugin called Vice from New Sonic Arts, and that's a bit like a recycle. You can throw an audio file in there and that'll chop it up. So that's generally what I've been doing more of. But if I need to really like slice something intricately, I will use recycle, yeah, but it's not used as much as it was. Yeah, the Raven. Everyone seems to be raving about the Raven. I had the, this is the Slate, this is the first Slate Raven because they've got two out there, but this was the first edition of it, and I bought it from San Francisco and carried it back through customs and got away with it. But I had to, my car was so small at the time, I had a sports car and I had to dump the box at the airport and just put it in the back. But yeah, it's been really good actually. I think it looks a lot better than the Mark II version of them, and it's touch screen. You can move stuff around. And I mean, that was the idea. I've had control surfaces before, and the idea was that you could do the touchscreen. But if the truth be told, I don't use the touchscreen at all. Really, what it's really good for is a monitor being right in front of you there. And that sounds ridiculous. Why didn't you just buy a monitor? But actually, it's a really good monitor, and it's at the right angle, and it just works. And I think the whole touchscreen thing and buying controllers, I think we're done with that, really. I think the mouse is, you know, it pains me to say, because I had a Logic control, the first one, and that looked the business. But you know, they're glorified stop and play machines, really. Genelec 8351s, again, they're like indispensable. I got them about 2 or 3 years ago, and they were a game changer for me. They had Andy from Source Distribution came and set them up. They've got built-in DSP room correction, so he came down and he puts a mic in front of him, measures the room. The monitors, they compensate for a lack of bass or too much highs. And so I've been pretty much nearly mixing, and I mean, the new track I did, Devil's Drop, that was mixed in here, and that's been sounding great out in the clubs. So it's quite a shock for me, because this room's quite small, and I've actually been getting my mixes so much better since then. So yeah, with them and the Mac Pro, I mean, that's all you need, really. They're the best things in the studio for sure. You know, the trouble is when you start buying Outboard, you buy one thing and then you've got to have another one to complement it. So I've got some cool stuff actually. I've got the UAD Apollo is the main sound card. That works. I'm running everything as hardware inserts in Logic, so everything's being done that way. I don't have a mix or anything. I think that's the best way to do it these days. I've got an API 2500 bus compressor, which is really good. It's really useful. Like, good for individual things. Like, I've done a new track that's recorded live horns, and it's good for making all those just sit down and squash elements like that. But it's also, I've been using it on as a, over the whole mix on some tunes. Like I've done a new sort of jungle tune for my album, and the whole mix goes through that, and it sounds like it just got so much weight and bottom end, and like the bottom end, it does something to the bottom end, the API, like, it just compresses really well. Like, the intro's as loud as the drop kind of thing, but in that like cushion way. So it sounds like old jungle. It's a nice piece of kit. And then I've got 3 SSL strips that I've had taken out of they're out of an SSL 4000 console. And so you can get those wrapped up from recycled audio, and I got one from Funky Junk as well. They're really useful for putting kicks and snares through, punchy stuff. They're stuff that you can do in the box, but it does sound better going through there. And also sub bass and stuff, like real fundamental elements. And when I upgrade the studio, I want to buy a few more and kind of make a little sidecar from it. 1176, just classic like vocal compressor. I use that when I'm recording vocals. That will be committed while I'm recording. It's good for the vocalist to hear the compression that they're using. It makes them perform better, and yeah, it's just a classic. And then Universal Audio LA610. I don't really use that. I got free with my Apollo ages ago, but I do record DI bass through it for some reason. I came across and every bass sounds amazing. Again, Devil's Drop, the bass player on that, he went through that, and it just seems to work. When you stumble across something and it works well, it may be totally like, there may be something better in my arsenal to use that, but it's like, no, that's for the bass, And then below it is the Avocet controller, which is the sort of hub of the studio, something I got quite recently. And it just makes everything, it's got some digital inputs, and they just do the conversion really well, much better than the Apollo, and it's just a useful thing to have in the studio, and you can switch between pairs of monitors and stuff. Oh yeah, I've got is it Alicia or Lysia character box? It's a saturation box. I haven't been using that as much as I like. I could get carried away with it using it on sub, but there's a few plugins. There's one called a plug and play Clarisonics plugin that does a similar thing, which is in the box, which is kind of a little bit easier. But yeah, it's cool. And then API 560 compressor. Again, one of those things I should use more, but I just haven't used it. And then next to that is an SSL X-Rack stereo channels, which is the same as those ones, but it's stereo. I do actually use that quite a lot. So if you've got like, again, some horns or something you want to brighten up, it's just really useful for anything stereo, which is quite often. So Moog, little fatty, just on there for show, really. I did use it on my new album, and I used it with a G-Funk Dre sound, the most generic like Moog sound you can get. Someone was telling me you can use it as a VST. You can connect it as a VST plugin. I think it's $99 to use the editor, and you can use it like that. So I need to probably buy that, and I might get more use out of it. But sadly, it's like pretty underused. And above that, it's a Neve 1073 preamp, which is what all the vocals go through. MPC Live, you saw me, we were using it earlier. That's a useful drum machine in the arsenal. Yeah, I've done a lot of tracks on that thing. That's portable, that one, so I take that in the car, make beats in the car. I was in Soho car park, like rinsing out for about 2 hours to get some funny looks, but you know. So yeah, it's useful. And then the latest thing I bought is this little jellyfish. They call it a jellyfish, this little monitor here. And you've got like, this was the thing that you'd find in the middle of an SSL console in the like 90s and 80s. And it's got like a spectral analyzer. And it's also got a stereo field thing. I can't remember what it's called, a genometer or something. I can't pronounce it. But yeah, it's nice to have that there. I mean, again, you've got a plug-in for that sort of stuff. But what's good is if I'm listening to Spotify or Apple Music, I'm looking at anything that I'm listening to, it's going through that. So if I'm just listening casually, you can be looking at the spectral analyzer, and you know, you're not studying it, but it's always within your eyesight, and you go, okay, oh, that's where that bass is sitting. You know, they're just stuff that's useful. I mean, I like to have my little toys because it keeps me inspired. I need to keep on buying little bits and pieces, you know.